Okay, what to expect from the NHL Draft this year? Well, it's obviously 7 rounds, 32 picks per round. I'm focusing on the first round because I think that's where a lot of interesting draft pick movement is going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of trades in regards to prospects and also players and contracts for pending UFA and RFA free agents as well getting moved. What I find interesting is there is a large number of teams without a first round draft pick. So, for example, New Jersey, Florida, Edmonton, Dallas, Vegas, Toronto, Colorado, Tampa, they traded their first round picks away. And I find that really interesting. Whereas other teams like Pittsburgh and Montreal and Philadelphia and Nashville, for example, have been hoarding draft picks. They've been picking up a lot of draft picks via trade, not only this season, but in the previous couple of seasons as well. So, what I expect to happen, I don't expect, let's say, the first 8 to 10 draft picks to move. I can see from Anaheim up to the Islanders, from 10th to 1st in this year's draft, I can't see those draft picks changing hands. But when we get to Pittsburgh at 11, that's their draft pick. They also are picking at 12, and that is a draft pick they picked up from Vancouver via the Rangers through trade. And this is what I think is going to be interesting. I can see teams like Philadelphia, like Pittsburgh, weaponising the fact they have multiple first-round draft picks to their advantage. There are a lot of teams that are in salary cap hell. Even with the salary cap going up, there are teams that are struggling to stay cap compliant by the start of next season. And there are other teams that are, I wouldn't say at the salary cap floor, but have a lot more salary cap space. San Jose, for example, they are in massive rebuild mode. They have a couple of draft picks in the first round, including 2nd overall and 30th. And they may seek to acquire another draft pick, for example. Or they could, for example, trade their 30th overall draft pick, which they acquired from Dallas, to either move up, move down, or potentially acquire another asset to add to their organisation, be it a prospect that's been drafted previously, that's in the AHL, ECHL system of a rival team, or a veteran player to add to their very young lineup to give them that veteran presence to help guide the young team around the ice. So, the Islanders are picking 1st overall, followed by San Jose, followed by Chicago at 3rd, then Utah at 4th, Nashville with their first pick coming at 5, which is their own draft pick from their finishing position in the league. Philadelphia have their first draft pick at 6, Boston come in at 7th, Seattle at 8th, Buffalo, the Sabres, they've made a mess of their rebuild over the best part of 15 years. They're drafting at 9, Anaheim at 10, then Pittsburgh have back-to-back picks at 11 and 12. Their 12th overall pick, they, as I say, acquired from Vancouver via the New York Rangers via trade. Detroit come in at 13th, and there is a lot of pressure on Yzerman in Detroit to get this team better. So they could potentially trade upwards to acquire a higher draft pick. Columbus have their first draft pick at 14th. They do have other draft picks they have acquired. Vancouver, now yes, they traded one draft pick away to Pittsburgh. They have their own standalone draft pick at 15th. They could have been drafting twice in the first round. So this is what I don't understand by certain organisations trading away first round draft picks regularly. Vancouver is one of those teams that regularly trades away draft picks, when in reality that is a team that really needs to rebuild and they're in denial about it. But that's their management, that's their GM, that's the organisation doing that. Montreal have back-to-back draft picks at 16, a pick they acquired from Calgary in a trade, and at 17th, which is their own standalone draft pick. Calgary traded away their 16th overall pick to then pick up a draft pick from New Jersey, and they're picking at 18. So that's an interesting one, so they've traded down. Make sense of it, I don't understand that either. St. Louis drafting at 19th with their pick. Columbus come in again. They picked up this draft pick at 20th from the Minnesota Wild. Ottawa come in with their draft pick at 21st. Philadelphia appear again. This is a pick they picked up from Colorado at 22nd. Nashville at 23rd. They picked up this draft pick from the Tampa Bay Lightning in trade. Los Angeles, where the draft is being held, the LA Kings, they're picking at 24. Chicago appear again at 25. They picked up this 25th overall draft pick from the Toronto Maple Leafs. interesting one there, considering Toronto had with their playoff struggles and question marks about how the team is, put together. They're being very cap heavy, of course, in the Mitch Marner situation. I find it interesting that Toronto have traded away a first overall draft pick. Nashville appear again. Now, this draft pick at 26, they acquired from the Vegas Golden Knights, another team that regularly trades away not only draft picks but drafted prospects. Now, that was originally a San Jose pick, which has been traded a couple of times to end up in Nashville's hands. Washington Capitals pick at 27. The team I follow, the Winnipeg Jets, are picking at 28. Carolina, the Hurricanes, picking at 29. San Jose picking yet again. Another draft pick for San Jose. This one is acquired from the Dallas Stars. That's 30th overall. Philadelphia, again, yet another draft pick that the Philadelphia Flyers have acquired via trade. This one is the Edmonton Oilers' 31st overall pick. And then the Calgary Flames have picked up the Florida Panthers' 32nd overall draft pick, again via trade. Now, I do find it interesting that Dallas, Edmonton, Florida, Toronto, Colorado, Tampa, Minnesota, New Jersey have traded away their first round draft picks. I find that really, really interesting. Calgary have traded away their first round draft pick to then pick up New Jersey's first round draft pick. And this is 2 days before the draft. What to expect? Well, we've got pending UFA and RFA free agency, and because some of these teams do not have a first overall pick of their own, they can't give offer sheets. So we may actually see, before the draft actually takes place, teams trade back to get a draft pick back, or in future years, get draft picks they traded away back so they can offer an offer sheet to an RFA should the RFA, the restricted free agent, turn down the offer that they're being given by the team they're currently under contract with. I can also see some of these first round draft picks and rounds 2 through 7, a lot of them being traded for teams trading up, trading down before draft day on Friday and Saturday, before the draft weekend. I can see draft picks changing hands in the next 48 hours. I could even see it happening at the draft table. As the draft is taking place, draft picks changing hands. Now, I don't expect the first 9 or 10 draft picks in the first round to change. From Anaheim up to the Islanders, I can't see that changing. What I can see happening is teams like Pittsburgh, who've got multiple first round picks, at 11 and 12, for example, potentially, should they not like what they're seeing at 11 or 12, trade that draft pick to another team. And go, we're not so keen on this particular player that's coming in at 11th overall or 12th overall, for example, but we like the player that's coming in, predicted to come in at 13, which is Detroit's draft pick. And we could potentially see a trade down or a trade up. I'm just using that as an example. Now, as I say, I also find it mind-boggling that some teams do not have a first overall pick. And they've traded futures away, basically. I wouldn't also be surprised if teams like the Philadelphia Flyers and the San Jose Sharks that are clearly rebuilding and have multiple draft picks that they've acquired via trade weaponise those extra draft picks to their advantage, either through trade to pick up a previously drafted prospect from another organisation, or an asset, an actual playing asset right now, a veteran player, to strengthen their the youthful teams, let's be honest, especially San Jose. I could see San Jose weaponising their extra draft picks they picked up, not only in the first round, but in later rounds as well, and trading a draft pick away in order to get a veteran player in to strengthen their very young, inexperienced roster. And with the UFA and RFA market, we could see some potential pending free agents, rather than going to free agency, getting traded this weekend during the draft, and then by the team they're traded to, offering them a contract extension. And I can see that happening as well. I can see a lot of trade movement involving this year's draft before draft day. And there's a lot of people who say that this draft is a weaker draft than last season or the season before. For example, they say it's a weaker draft than in more recent years. But I can see a lot of pick movement and player movement in the next 48 to 72 hours. We could see a lot of draft picks change hands from the second round down as well, because there are draft steals in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round. Yes, there are players who get drafted in the seventh round who end up becoming NHL, stars. Actual deep, good advanced scouting, good talent, good European scouting as well, and a lower draft pick getting picked up who ends up becoming a really good, solid NHL player. And there'll be those who get overlooked in the draft who, a team, let's say, for example, Pittsburgh. I will use Pittsburgh as an example at 11. It's their first. They don't like what they're seeing at 11. They pass on a player. They trade up or trade down, either with Anaheim or Detroit. And that player that would have gone to Pittsburgh at 11th overall ends up becoming a pretty good player because, for whatever reason, Pittsburgh Penguins aren't keen on that particular pick. They trade it away. The pick they end up with ends up being a bust. The pick they trade away ends up being a pretty solid player. We could see missteps like that because of advanced scouting from some organisations being better than others. I find it interesting that it's the same teams on a regular basis, such as Vegas, for example. And in this season, Florida, Edmonton and Dallas trading away first round picks to win now. Now, Florida, they're not in a rebuild mode. They've won back-to-back Stanley Cups. Edmonton been back-to-back Stanley Cup finalists. Dallas have been to the conference final in, Vegas, not long ago, winning their first Stanley Cup. Have only missed the playoffs once since they entered the league. Some of these teams have been in win-now mode for a while. This could catch up with them by missing out on a first round or even a second round pick. There are some teams that have no second round picks where you can get a good steal in the draft. That hurts them down the line because they're in win-now mode. Now, it's worked for Florida. They've done a very good job in building their roster, drafting well, developing well, picking up good players in trade and on free agency. They're in win-now mode. The problem is, at some point, you need to have young talent coming through, new talent coming through to replace aging veteran players who are going to move on, who are going to retire, who are going to be traded away, who may end up on long-term injury reserve because of niggling long-term injuries. So it's an interesting one. I can see a lot of player movement. I can see a lot of these draft picks changing hands. It's going to be very interesting how the draft pans out in the first round and from rounds 2 through 7. I think that's going to be really interesting how much movement we see, where GMs at the draft table are going, don't like the player we're going to pick, let's say, for example, Winnipeg, 28. They may decide to trade up. They may like a player that, for example, Philadelphia, 22nd overall, they picked up from Colorado. As a Jets fan, Chevel Dayoff may look at that and go, we don't like what we're getting here, but we like that guy. Let's use this as an opportunity to trade up and get a player that we actually need. Some GMs will be looking at positions, so we need centres. Let's say Chicago, 3rd overall. Let's say there's a lot of uncertainty about what players are going where. Let's say it's a defenseman. Let's say they want a centre. They may trade up or trade down to get that centre. Another team may go, we need defensemen. Where we're picking, let's say Anaheim at 10th. We want a defenseman. We've got a right winger here. We're not so keen on that. We want a defenseman that we can bring through the organisation. We'll trade. We'll see if Buffalo will be happy to, trade picks. We could see that kind of movement, but it's going to be fun. I can see a lot of trades happening, and look for some steals in this draft. Look for some players to drop as well that are expected to go earlier, where a lot of GMs will pass over and go, we're not picking this player. You will see players drop in the draft, and you'll see other players climb in the draft as well, which also changes the dynamic of the first round, second round, and all the way on to the 7th round. But there we go. That's my thoughts on what to expect from this year's NHL Draft. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.